PragerU has made a video about color blindness. Now, I'm guessing color blindness, when it comes from the conservative point of view, is ignore all systemic injustices towards people of color, ignore any systemic racism, ignore racism in general, unless it's like literally someone screaming a racial slur at somebody else. Then it's a racist thing. And I think that's when they think is racist. I don't even know if they think that's racist anymore, considering how insane the right wing has become now. I'm guessing somehow they're going to say that the left has divided us by race, something like that. And again, no, I've not watched the video. It's just I've heard their talking points a lot when it comes to this type of stuff. Conservatives, Ben Shapiro, Crowder, you name it, you got it. It's like the same talking points. So let's just look at this video right now. All right, got the video full screen. I can't wait to hear the talking points, the same old talking points. Can't wait to hear them for the millionth time.
There is little that reveals the moral confusion of the left as much as it's labeling the term colorblind racist. Here are just a few examples. The University of California publishes a list of terms and ideas it considers racist. The list includes the term colorblindness. Psychology Today published an article by a psychology professor titled "Colorblind Ideology is a Form of Racism."
I would agree.
HuffPost published a piece titled "How Colorblindness is Actually Racist," in which the author gives 3 examples of statements whites make that are allegedly racist. I am colorblind. I see people, not color. We are all the same. The Disney company recommends that its white employees atone for their racism by challenging colorblind ideologies and rhetoric such as, "I don't see color." Even the U.S. Army has gotten into the act. It sent an email to personnel saying that the word colorblind is evidence of white supremacy. I could give dozens of examples of the left's Orwellian definition of colorblind as racist.
Oh, so I guess informing people that ignoring racism is a form of racism is Orwellian? Bruh. Only the right wing will start screaming about authoritarianism when we're just trying to say that systemic racism and racism exists. And that being ignorant of racism, like deliberately ignoring it because you don't want to confront it, is a form of racism. Only the conservatives will do this, and they'll start screaming, it's fascism.
Why Orwellian?
Yeah, why?
Because becoming colorblind is precisely what people opposed to racism should aspire to. That's why Martin Luther King's most famous quote from his most famous speech is, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character."
Okay, that's what he said, but that's not what that means. It's not ignore colorness or ignore colorblind or ignore people's color. It means we should judge each other by our character, but we should also recognize the fact that black people, brown people, other minorities go through things that white people don't because of systemic racism and things like that. That's what he means. He means we can come together to defeat these issues and live in, harmony and, sing Kumbaya and all that, right? But you can't do that until you've solved the issues, until you fix the systemic issues that are current in America and in some cases also in Canada as well. But mostly, the issues in America obviously are worse. But those things need to be fixed before we can live together in peace. Right? So he's taking a character, not the color, but the character of their content. Oh, did I just say the character of their content? I mean the content of their character. That is a true quote. But for that to be achieved, we have to solve systemic racism and other systemic issues that affect people of color and other groups, such as women, LGBTQ people who are, part of many groups. Both those groups or more. Those things have to be fixed before we can live in equality.
The left's position is that Martin Luther King was wrong.
No, that's
But it's the
bullshit.
left that's wrong. The colorblind person is the very definition of a non-racist person. Here's one obvious proof. The worst racists, defenders of slavery, supporters of Jim Crow laws, the Ku Klux Klan, just to cite American examples, were the least colorblind people. Color is the one thing they and all racists see. Precisely because they defined people by their color, they justified subjugation of blacks. Colorblind means one does not believe a person's color is in any way significant. Isn't that the ideal?
But the problem is, it is significant. We're not saying that, left is not saying don't judge people by their character, only judge them by their color. We're saying a person's color defines their life experiences. It defines the things they have to go through and not go through, right? So for a person of color, especially a black person in America, they will have to go through more obstacles and jump more hurdles than a non-black person, especially a white person, because of the systemic racism that exists. Color is important because of systemic racism. That's what makes it important. Because there's a difference in life experiences because of color. So being colorblind when there's injustices going on is bad. It's stupid and it is racist because you're ignoring racism because it makes you feel uncomfortable. Right? So that is being basically allowing racism to go on. And it is a part of white supremacy also, because ignoring race, so to speak, is a way of allowing racism to go on, if it's going on still, which it is. So you have to understand that. Being colorblind in a society that is just and fair, okay, that's great. But being colorblind in a society that's not just and fair is being incredibly ignorant and stupid.
Shouldn't we define a person by their heart, mind, personality, and as Martin Luther King said, above all, character? Does anyone look into a mirror and see color? No, they don't. They see a human being. When a white person looks into a mirror, does he or she think, look, a white person? When a black person looks into a mirror, does he or she think, look, a black person?
I'm sure everyone sees their color when they look in the mirror. The importance of that varies from person to person, obviously, but people do.
Of course not. When we look at ourselves, we see John, or Jessica, or Tamika, or Jose. We see our
Like how they make the Mexican guy Jose.
selves, not color. Why isn't that how we would want everyone to see us? The left's insistence that color is important is one of the most racist and anti-human doctrines of our time. It was precisely when America was most racist that people's color was deemed most important.
We're not, but see, the difference is they said color was important because they believed black people and other types of people were inferior to whites. We believe color is important because because of systemic racism and that the way it affects people's lives. And we think that's bad and we want to fix those issues. There's a big difference between that. You're saying that the left, looking at color, saying color is important is the exact same as when the conservatives back in those days used to say that color is important because they thought color was important because they were racist and believed, minorities, women, LGBTQ, whatever other minority groups or groups that were oppressed were inferior to the straight white males. While we're saying color is important because it is important because color it determines a person's life a lot in an unfair way. It really does. It gives certain people privileges. It gives certain people hurdles, right? And that's not a good thing. It shouldn't. And that's why we're saying it's important. We're saying it's important because of the real life effects. We're not saying that it's great that that exists. We're saying that's bad and we want to fix it and we want to have a system that treats people by their content of their character. We're not saying color is important because, we don't like white people. Some crazy stuff like that. That's not what we're saying.
Why would we want to return to that time? Why is your skin
We're not returning to that time. What?
color any more important than your hair color? Or for that matter, the color of your shoes?
It's more important because people judge you harshly based on that. You're denied certain things because of that. You have bad experiences because of that. You're denied access to certain things like a good education or healthcare or what's another thing? Housing. Anything like that can be denied because of the way you look. You can have bad experiences with authority, such as law enforcement. We've seen so many unarmed black people getting shot in America. So yes, your color is important when the racist system makes it important. We're saying on the left that we shouldn't have those things. It should be where in a system where we're judged by the content of a character, like Martin Luther King said. But being colorblind while people of color are facing injustices is, at the most charitable interpretation you can give to that is that you're incredibly naive and ignorant. And the other one is that you are like racist and you don't want to examine your own prejudices or the prejudices of society or the group of people that you're part of at all, and because it makes you feel uncomfortable.
Name one important thing your color tells others about you. You can't.
I can. Your color says your life experience, certain life experiences you could possibly have. Your color can say that the way you've been treated by the system that you've been in. It can tell you some things about the possibilities. Not saying that it can say any character things. We're not talking about that. We're saying about the way the system has treated someone on their color. Yeah, we can say that based on their color. Yeah.
Does your color tell us if you're kind?
No.
Or smart?
No.
Or what foods or music you like? Or
No.
what you do for a living?
No.
Does it tell us anything about the most important thing about you, your values?
Nope.
No. Your color tells us nothing about you.
That, again, it's not true. Your color can determine a lot of things in life. So we can guess that you might have gone through some things because of your color. Not for sure, but there's a higher chance that you would have.
So why should anyone not be colorblind? To be colorblind means one ignores the least important thing about you. Isn't that a good thing?
See, he's trivializing someone's experiences because of their color by saying, oh, it's not important. It is important because of the system is racist, and because it is, color is important. And we on the left want to fix that, but you don't want to fix that. You want to ignore it by being colorblind. That's not a solution. That's not the same thing. So being colorblind in and itself is not a good thing. Being, like I said, mentioned before, being colorblind in a fair and just system, that's good. Being colorblind in an unfair and an unjust system, and that is racist, not good.
And isn't the opposite position that your race is important racist?
No.
Those who revere the Bible must be colorblind. The only thing the Bible tells us about Adam is that he was created in God's image.
But there were Christian slave owners. Pretty much all the slave owners in America were Christian. How do you said they were Bible loving? They were Bible loving, but they still own slaves. That doesn't make any sense, Prager. Huh? There were still people who were Christians who fought against emancipation, against civil rights. And there were Christians who fought for emancipation and for civil rights. So there were Bible-loving people who were bad and Bible-loving people who were good. Conclusion? Look, the Bible doesn't really determine like that. It's not going to make sure that the person's not racist. That's stupid.
If the Bible placed any significance on race, wouldn't it have told us Adam's color? And does God have a color?
I mean, Jesus is always portrayed as European, as white. Adam and Eve, when they're in paintings, are always white. So yeah, they're portrayed as white. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they do have color because you made them have color.
That there were Christians who defended slavery on racial grounds only proves that there were Christians who distorted the biblical view on race. At the same time, it was Bible-believing Christians who organized the first large-scale effort in world history.
I don't think America's slavery, end of slavery, was the first one. Fact check me on that, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't the first, like, ending of slavery, so to speak.
To abolish slavery. A final thought. Imagine that tomorrow every human being woke up blind. Would the world be more or less racist? I'm Dennis Prager.
What? I mean, you just admitted it. You just literally admitted that you have to be blind to be like being colorblind is not seeing what's around you. Okay, so a lot of things to unpack in this video. One, he's basically saying being colorblind is a good thing because you're following MLK's vision of judging people by the content of their character rather than their color. Now, if we lived in a fair and just society, his argument would actually make sense. If we lived in a society without systemic racism and things like that, oh yeah, I mean, I would agree with him 100%. But we don't live in a place like that. There are clear systemic injustices against people of color and in other minority groups. But since we're talking about racism, let's talk about just racism. Him saying it, he's basically saying we should ignore racist problems or racism, and that solves race. No, that's not that simple, because there not only is racism there, but systemic racism you can't just ignore. You have to solve those things. I mean, there's countless examples. Like when they did that resume test thing, where they had two identical resumes. One had a white name and one had a black name. You know, they made it stereotypical, and then they send them out. The white ones got way more, let's say, callbacks, way more response than the black ones, even though they had the exact same qualifications, the exact same, exact same qualifications. The fact that black people and Hispanic people, and other minorities, but especially black people and Hispanic people, make up the majority of the prison population, when, for example, black and white people do the same amount of marijuana, right? Yet black people get arrested for way more than white people. Why is that? Right? Why is that more unarmed black people get shot for being black than white people getting shot for being white? How many white people get shot for being white? Barely. You see what I'm saying? You think the officer who killed George Floyd would have done it to him if he was white? No way. But because he's black, he thought he could get away with it. Right? We've seen this again and again and again. So this idea that there aren't systemic problems, and the only problem is that we're focusing too much on color. We're not focusing too much on color. We're just saying racism exists, systemic racism exists, and ignoring it is about as good as being a racist. Just as, you know, it's basically the being a racist, because you're allowing racism to continue and to grow by ignoring it. And you might be ignoring it because you might not want to think that you're racist, even though you might be racist. You see what I'm saying? There could be many reasons for why you're ignoring it. So I don't think it's a good idea to be colorblind in a society where there is racism. So ignoring a problem doesn't make it go away. Confronting it and solving it is what makes it go away, right? I mean, aren't conservatives all about, pull up yourself by the bootstraps, don't make excuses, look at your problems and solve them? But when it comes to this, it's all put your heads in the sand and ignore it, right? That's so weird. Like, you want to ignore the problem, you don't want to make it go away, but at the same time, see, if you started confronting the problems, you might have to believe that, they will have to admit the fact that they are part of that problem, because they're consistently pushing the narrative that there isn't a systemic racism. There isn't that, because they themselves are racist. And they knew if people start looking at the system in a negative light and seeing the truth, well, that's going to be a problem. So yeah, I think Dennis Prager is basically making the argument that you gotta be colorblind to not be racist. Where in my eyes, you gotta be anti-racist. You gotta actively fight against racism. You can't just say, I don't see color. That's so stupid. We all see color, obviously, but the difference is a non-racist person will see the color and be like, oh, okay, that person's black, and leave it at that. A racist person will look at that and either do two things: either view them as inferior, or basically invalidate their experiences, ignore their experiences. An anti-racist person would listen and empathize with that person's experiences because of their color, and will actively fight racism. While a non-racist will either be impassive and not completely ignore any sort of racism or systemic racism and stick their head in the sand like PragerU is recommending, or they'll be actively racist. But not seeing color is stupid, because it doesn't work that way when the system does see color. That's all I gotta say about this. It's a pretty simple argument to defeat.